Hey, what's going on? It's Justin from Horrible Home Video, and I was just wondering, did you ever used to watch that show called Freddy's Nightmares, the TV series that was based on Nightmare on Elm Street? Well, the episode I want to talk about today is called Freddy's Tricks and Treats. And this is one of the few episodes that actually has Freddy in the storyline. So let's go ahead and get into that right now. Spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't, why are you watching this? The episode begins at a sorority house where we see a young woman by the name of Marsha, played by Mariska Hargitay, who you might recognize from Ghoulies or even Seinfeld. Marsha is studying while everyone downstairs is having a Halloween party. And I could be mistaken, but I think that's Eugene Levy standing behind her. A fella named Mark decides to wear the cheapest looking hockey mask I've ever seen. Likely an attempt to diss Jason Voorhees on a Freddy TV series because Freddy thinks Jason is weak as fuck. Bruh. I personally think Jason and Freddy are both cool, by the way, but the series clearly has beef, showing Jason stumbling around like this. Mark here tells Marsha she needs to stop studying for her anatomy exam, but says she can examine his anatomy if she likes. She tells Mark, nah, I'm gonna pass, I'm good, I'll probably get a bad grade if I did that, and she storms off. Making her way through the party, she sees Gary, who asks her to join the party, but says she would rather study in a room full of cadavers. Next, we see Zach, explaining he's creating a way to see people's dreams on TV screens. Some sort of dream machine, if you will, with his main goal being to see the women nude. Marsha is uncomfortable by the things Zach is saying and heads out to study. Marsha decides to give Ernie, the security guard, a heart attack on Halloween night. Ernie tells Marsha it's super gross that she wants to study in a room full of corpses, and then begins to tell her the tale of a man named Freddy Krueger and how he was burned alive for his crimes. Marsha says she doesn't believe in ghost stories and that dead or alive, Freddy is gonna have to do more than just say boo to get her attention. Marsha is now literally carving up a cadaver of an elderly man and taunts Freddy as she looks at the corpse. In turn, Freddy carves the word boo into the forehead of the cadaver to spook her. Marsha brings in Ernie to show him the corpse's forehead carving, but nothing is there. Ernie tells her she is fried and to maybe knock it off for the night, but she declines, so Ernie says he will stick around to keep her company and then barehandedly fingers the corpse to prove he is brave, only to freak out mere seconds later and leave her alone again. Some security guard, huh? More like an insecurity guard. Marsha has a flashback of childhood trauma where her hands are being washed of the filth of boys by her grandmother, as Marsha cries that she didn't do anything wrong. We then cut to Marsha, who has now scrubbed her hands to the meat, and we see her grandmother wearing Freddy's glove and hat in place of where the corpse was. But Mark arrives to snap Marsha out of the dream, noticing her burnt hands. Mark wants a smooch, but for some reason, Marsha is not in the mood, Mark. Geez, I wonder why, Mark. Mark hears something, so he goes to check on it. And it's then that Marsha sees her reflection, and her face is now a pumpkin mask. Instead of simply removing the mask as anyone else would try first, she instead decides to claw at it like some kind of animal. And the mask bleeds, causing Marsha to panic and run down the hallway. She looks at her reflection again, only to see that she is fine. Only a tweaker would be staring in the mirror, clawing at their face, thinking they were a pumpkin. Freddy's voice taunts Marsha, but she assumes it is Mark's voice for some reason, and she seeks him out. And Marsha thinks just when she has found Mark, instead she finds the bones of Eugene Levy. Mark has pranked Marsha. Marsha. But then the skeleton comes alive and tears into Mark's eyes. It's Freddy as a skeleton, and he says Marsha should jump his bones and cackles at her. Marsha has been napping on a dead body and it was just a dream. She gets up and finds Mark in the hall, who pulls out a dollar store pumpkin mask and invites her to trick or treat with him. As they walk down the street, they find a house and peek into the window where they see themselves making out. Or maybe that's not him. I honestly, all these guys kind of look the same. That might not be Mark. But only to be interrupted by her grandmother, who calls her a filthy hooah. Grandma figures it's time to give Marsha the belt, but Marsha yells at Grandma, which gives her a heart attack. Marsha runs into the memory of her grandmother dying, and the dead granny is about to attack Marsha. Marsha claws Granny's face like a dollar store pumpkin mask, only to uncover that it is actually Freddy Krueger himself, and she runs away immediately. Mark is waiting outside telling her she does not need him anymore, now that she has faced her fears. Freddy pops up and says the shittiest one-liner he has ever said.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
Yeah, okay, Freddy, whatever the shit that means. Marsha is now crying about Mark in the street as friends gather around her. Zach, from earlier, talking about the dream machine, remember him? He reveals to Gary that there never was a Mark and that she is batshit crazy. And get used to stuff like this in Freddy's Nightmares. About halfway into the show, it always turns at 180s into a different story arc, and usually undoes the first story, and also usually pretty goddamn convoluted. Oh, and Freddy pops up and does this because, well, they gotta show Freddy every now and then to keep the viewers hooked, even if it doesn't add to the plot. Now we see Marsha enter a room where she sees two guys staring into her window, so she decides to give them a show. I remember seeing this and thinking, holy shit, how far is this going to go? It is revealed the scene we have just witnessed was Marsha's dream being viewed on Zach's dream machine. Zach and Gary are glued to the set, but then the screen becomes static. Zach is frustrated that the dream machine is no better than the scrambled adult channels that he watches every night. Marsha, still deep in a dream, realizes she is no longer being watched, but Freddy pops up proclaiming he loves screamers. Gary notices Marsha is panicking and wakes her up, while Zach silently suffers from blue balls. Zach is trying to convince Marsha to keep using the dream machine for obvious reasons, but she is not interested as her nightmares are growing worse. But she reluctantly agrees to continue with the tests on his dream machine. Zach is now an unstoppable creep. Marsha is attached to the machine once again and having a nightmare. Zach and Gary wake her up. She reveals she has seen Freddy Krueger, and with this knowledge, they decide to take her down to Freddy's boiler room because they obviously make great decisions. Marsha continues to protest being there but goes unheard, so Zach decides to ditch Marsha. Marsha looks for Zach, only to see a shadow that looks like Fred Krueger. And then she finds a girl stuck in a cage. And it turns out this was all a dream, but for some reason they are actually in the boiler room while Marsha is sleeping attached to the dream machine. And I think Freddy might be doing something inappropriate to Marsha, but whatever could it be? Marsha wakes up with slices in her clothes and Zach tells her she doesn't need to go back. And then he reviews the tape of her dream with Gary and a professor, to which Zach explains the images are the most clear when the dreams are more intense, and he thinks forcing the dreams to be worse will improve visual clarity. Gary argues that Zach is a piece of shit creepazoid, and the professor agrees that Zach needs to chill. Later that night, Zach tells Marsha the project is over and presents it in a way to manipulate her to want to continue using the machine, and she says so. And then the two kiss for some reason. Poor Marsha. What have you become? A hua. Now Marsha is in a dream. In the boiler room, she finds the little girl again, but when she reaches for her, she turns into a doll. And Freddy shows up, lifting Marsha by the throat, ready to slice her up. It is revealed that Zach is choking Marsha in her sleep with the idea of making the dream more intense. But the dream is so goddamn intense, she has now pulled Zach into her dream. And now Freddy makes light work of Zach. Marsha wakes up and sees the dream machine and rewinds it to see Freddy killing Zach. We see blood pour out of a VCR as Freddy is drinking a beer and saying another poorly written one-liner. And that's our time for today, so be sure to hit that like and drop a comment. Consider joining the Patreon on a paid tier to see your name on screen, or join for free just to get updates, and check out these other videos I have for you here.